Hello. Today I'm going to introduce everyone to a new joint venture small electric car, the Renault KZE. It is the cheapest joint venture electric car available, at about 8,000 to 9,000 euros. You won't find any other joint venture cars at that price. But can such a cheap car provide a quality experience? So, what is the Renault KZE? In essence, it's a Renault Kwid with an electric powertrain. The Kwid is a very popular small car that Renault sells in markets like India and Brazil. Both the Kwid and the KZE are based on the CMF-A vehicle architecture that has been developed in India and underpins cars like the Kwid, Datsun Go, and Go Plus. The Chinese vehicle market, however, is more mature than the Indian or the Brazilian market, and the proliferation of charging stations means that all-electric vehicles like the KZE are an increasingly popular option for Chinese consumers. By putting the KZE on an existing platform, Renault gets even more bang for their buck. That makes the KZE somewhat of a no-brainer. Now that we've explored the background of the KZE, let's talk a little bit about the exterior styling. Up front is an evolution of the Renault design language that we've been seeing for years. My biggest takeaway is that I think it manages to do something that is actually very difficult, and that is make a very cheap car look a little more premium. The highly stylized headlights and grille, as well as the large fog lamps down below, give the car more presence than you might expect. I also appreciate the detailing on the plastic of the grille, which lends some visual flavor to what could be another expanse of plain black plastic. It's not all good, however. For example, the keyholes on the driver and passenger side doors look like they came out of a car from the 1960s, not the 21st century. Moving on to the interior, thanks to their experience with the successful Dacia brand, Renault is no stranger to producing solidly built cars at a surprisingly low price. That experience shows on the interior of the KZE, where the fit and finish are quite good. You are surrounded by hard black plastic, there is no doubt about that, but it still feels well put together. While it can hardly be described as luxurious, it manages not to feel like you're being punished for not being able to afford a more expensive car. Probably the most surprising thing about the interior of this car is the big infotainment screen. In reality, this is a must in China. There's no way you can sell a car here these days without a decent-sized center screen. That center screen is also easy to use, with decent clarity and image quality. There isn't much in the way of safety equipment, with no side airbags or ESP available in this Chinese example. That's something Renault will have to address before even attempting to export this thing to the European market. And between the seats, you'll find a knob for the transmission. No sport mode or flappy paddle gearboxes here, folks. Just drive, neutral, and reverse. Whoa. I tell you, sometimes when you're driving this car, the tires will spin, especially on a wet road or loose surface. If you push the pedal straight to the floor from a dead stop, the tires will make a squealing sound as they spin. It's a bit like a performance car, and it's actually really fun. But in fact, this car's power is actually really low. It only has about 44 horsepower. These days, you don't often see cars with less than 100 horsepower on the road. The KZE comes equipped with a 26.8 kilowatt-hour battery attached to a single-speed transmission. The electric motor driving the front wheels is good for 44 bhp and 120 newton-meters of torque. In a world of 700 horsepower Teslas, that isn't much. But the KZE weighs a somewhat astonishing 921 kilograms, allowing it to hit 60 kilometers an hour in less than 7 seconds, and onto a top speed of 105 kilometers an hour. That's all well and good here in China, but I suspect Renault will need to raise that to something like 120 or 130 kilometers an hour before trying to sell it in Europe. Estimated range is 271 kilometers, but Renault claims that if you stay below 60 kilometers an hour, you can stretch that to about 350 kilometers. Considering the kind of traffic this thing will see in major cities here in China, I think it's safe to say that it won't be seeing speeds over 60 kilometers an hour very often anyways. In order to keep the weight and the price low, Renault decided to forego any kind of energy recovery system, like regenerative braking. They also say that on a fast charge, it will take about 50 minutes to go from a dead flat battery to 80%, Slow charge, however, will take closer to 4 hours.
我刚试的时候呢，0到50公里每小时，差不多。
This car will hit 0 to 50 kilometers an hour in about 5 seconds, which feels pretty fast. Its tires are also very skinny, only 165 in width, which is about the same size as a small spare tire on most cars. You don't often see cars with tires this skinny these days, but the small contact patch on these tires is good for one thing, and that is saving electricity. That small contact patch is also why the tires will spin so easily when you get on the power. When it comes to going around corners, the steering feel is very good, much better than I would expect for such a cheap car. The chassis is also very solid. Maybe not as solid as a purely European car, but still quite good.
比较紧实，然后侧向的支撑呢又比较好。
So, is the Renault KZE ready for the European market? The answer is not quite yet. While I do think this is a compelling package, what with its SUV-inspired design, solid build quality inside and out, and decent electric performance, Renault will need to make some major upgrades before sending this thing to Europe. First and foremost, it will need to make sure the safety equipment is up to snuff. That means the addition of side airbags and ESP. They will also need to increase the top speed by 20 or 30 kilometers an hour to make sure this thing can survive on European roads. If it manages to address all those things while keeping the price around 13,000 euros, I think they will have a genuine competitor in the burgeoning small electric car market. That's all for today. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.